Welcome. Why don't we go to the erase race debate? And I just made that topic up because I really don't know what this is going to be called. But I'm so honored to have my girl T. Lou in the house. You wouldn't believe how far we go back and how deep we go back. So I would just want to say welcome to it. Tanya Dallas Lewis, welcome. Stellar nominated artist. Girl can sing like she got an angel stuck down her throat. So you
Oh,
got to know that she's in the house today, and we have a debate, but it's a debate of love because we're going to argue like brothers and sisters that we are, and we're going to make it happen. So say hi to T. Lou.
hey everybody, and hello, of course, to my dear brother Carlen and fam.
And fam. Yeah, because we got it. We rode deep. We rode deep. So it's pretty cool. So we got into this about this debate thing, and we decided let's talk about it, because we know we tight. We know at the end of this, we're gonna be like, hey, I love you, even though you're wrong. I love you, you're wrong, whatever. But it's not about that. We're like, it's about what we can add to each other. Because as we were talking before, as we add to each other, we're gonna realize how valuable it is, number one, to have a T. Lou in my life who can, with her thought and critical thinking, make me better. And that's what people got to understand about debate and discussion. You listen to the other people because they're offering something that you don't have. And so that's what I venture to happen here. As I try to pour into her stuff that I have that maybe she doesn't have. And so
That's right.
that happens. And so I'll give you a little background and I'll give T. Lou a chance to talk her viewpoint, and then I'll talk my viewpoint, and we'll just have this discussion. But I made a Facebook post the other day, and it had the Avengers on it. And if you know the Avengers, you got Iron Man, you got Black Panther, you got Hulk, you got Captain America, you got all these people on the Avengers. And I said that basically my premise was that you think Black Panther sees the privilege of Iron Man, or do you think he doesn't see that, whatever? And so my view is that because they're all on the same team, of course, they don't see that privilege. And that was one of the things that I got from T. Lou, because her response kind of said that. And so we kind of were disagreeing on whether or not this privilege thing exists, because I said Iron Man and Black Panther don't see it because they both feel gifted and they're both part of the same team. And she articulated, and I'll let her voice that, but she was saying, yeah, but our society is not there right now. And so, T. Lou, so what was your view on that post, and what were you saying?
Well, first, let me say that I appreciated that you would take those collage of superheroes and put them together and pose that viewpoint, even though I vehemently disagreed with it. But after looking at it, I saw that there were some similarities that you and I had, even though we were going to communicate it in a different way. And so absolutely, I pointed out that the Black Panther doesn't need to complain about everybody else's privilege, because in this particular situation, this is a situation where everybody's on the same page. They're all on the same team. They all recognize that everybody is needed at the table. And despite their shortcomings or their weaknesses or even their strengths, everybody's going to benefit. Okay, so it's already been established that even though they have, different strengths and weaknesses, that everybody is valued. And so that's not the way it works in our society today. And so when it comes to white privilege, for me, based on my research, white privilege is something that I would like you to, first and foremost, I just want to see, Carlen, if you would agree that it is not only systemic, but that it is also personal. Would you agree that white privilege is something that is personal and is something systemic?
Well, you have to define what you mean by, well, both of those things. Kind of clarify what you mean by personal. When you say personal, because if you say personal, then I'm thinking it differs by individual, because it makes personal, which would mean to me that it would not be grouped as such as this group of people and that group of people. It's very personal. So I could have privilege that you don't have. So that would be personal to me. And we might have the same skin color. And I would have a privilege you don't have. That's what I think by personal. So what do you mean by personal?
Well, actually, let me take it back a step further, because originally you had said that first we probably would need to define what white privilege is. Okay, so we were talking about privilege, and privilege in general is just basically access to a benefit or some type of power that you may not have earned, It's just a privilege, right? For instance, as a teacher, in my classroom, I would often allow my students to use their cell phones during homeroom. I did not owe it to them, okay? I just allowed them as a courtesy, just as a privilege, And so I would often have to remind them, look, I don't owe this to y'all. All right, don't abuse this privilege, because I am allowing you out of the kindness of my heart to use your cell phones because there's no content or instruction going on during homeroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would you agree that that is a fairly
Privilege.
good definition of
Sure.
privilege?
Sure, privilege is, yeah, privilege.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to move just a little bit and shift our lens to white privilege. And I know with you and your Erase Race campaign, which I see, again, there's shades of it that I'm like, yes, and then other parts I'm like, Carlen, no. But when it comes to white privilege, when we're talking about society and systems, now that's when a white person has greater access to power and resources than people of color in that same situation. So with that working definition for me, then your wonderful example of the Black Panther and the other Avengers is not going to work anymore. Because I think we would say I think we would probably agree that Iron Man, Captain America, and all the other heroes, they all have access to power and resources. Nobody's being denied that based on the pigmentation of their skin. Yes, but in the world we live in today, Carlen, that is the case.
Okay, so, but isn't the issue that they don't have access to the same power and resources? And so because think about it, Black Panther and Iron Man, and especially Hulk and Iron Man, they got their bank accounts are going to be totally different. They got their total access to resources is totally different. So then could Hulk then still have this sense that Iron Man has more privilege because Iron Man got serious dollars? Of all of them, Iron Man is probably the wealthiest. Captain America, he ain't got much. He was military. He ain't got nothing. I can tell you, he retired military. He ain't got nothing. And you talk about Iron Man. Iron Man made all that money, billions of dollars or whatever. And so what kind of privilege does he? So he just has privilege over Hulk and not necessarily white privilege over Hulk. Why is that?
Well, I will tell, well, look, for me, if we stay in your example or your imaginary, well, it's not imaginary because it is based on a Hollywood narrative, but if we stay in that, you are correct. Iron Man has access to millions of dollars, resources, military resources, you name it, he's got it. The difference is he is not merely an ally of the Hulk or any of the other people in the Avengers. He is a co-conspirator, which means through his privilege, they have access to all that stuff.
Oh,
so when you look at modern society today, for me, we do have some white brothers and sisters who are out there who recognize the disparities in our justice system, in our social systems, in our economic systems. They recognize it. Some of them may even feel bad,
So, but none of them are co-conspirators?
From that point on, they don't share those resources. Show me.
Oh, okay. So we're at the point now where, so I see where we are in this discussion. All right. So you're saying that we don't have co-conspirators that are different skin colors.
We don't have enough of them.
Whoa. Okay. So now we're down to quantity. Okay. So we do have some, but we don't have enough of them.
No.
Okay, so all right, so let's get to that then. So if we had enough of them, what would that look like? What would enough of them look like? Because, and I'll tell you my premise view is, because I think we're very similar on this. My view is this: we have enough of them, but because of our concept of race, and this is where my whole ideology about race comes in, because of our concept of race, we don't access them. Because race itself was meant to keep that division between us. And that's what it does. And so while there could be, let's say I've got an Iron Man in my life and I'm just Carlen Charleston, I'm the retired military guy, whatever. There's an Iron Man that, just like you said, who makes his resources accessible to me, then that would mean that we live in that society that you said we need to have, and we're not there yet. That's that society where we have the same sharing of resources, and when that is, then we will no longer have white privilege. And I'm telling you, and my view is this, and I could draw. I'm writing this thing called Carlen's Book of Humans, and I profile the top 50 human beings in my life and what I think their purpose was in my life. And when I look at that thing, and the people in there. And I've got people all up and down the socioeconomic spectrum or whatever. And those people that I have there, I have access to all their resources. And so I think that that world that you're talking about doesn't exist, that you believe doesn't exist, exists for those who understand it and spend their lives creating it. What does that mean? It means as a Black guy, I don't just hang in my Black realm, because I realize that there's lots of resources out there and people who want to share their resources with me and who feel like their lives were built on sharing their resources with people not like themselves and like others. And so I think that's just my ideology, and it's not true for everybody, but I understand. And that's why I'm doing Erase Race, because I think that's the world we need to go to. And so that's why I don't, and it's not that I don't think that this thing that they call white privilege exists, but I think it's an ideology that is true for people who accept it and live according to it.
Well, I'm going to say that you're absolutely right. It is an ideology based upon a dominant ideology. And that ideology is something we call whiteness. And so while we go back to the Avengers, allies, for them being allies of one another is going to work because they have the same goal. They have the same goal, which is to save the world and make sure that everybody lives in a better place. But when it comes to race, which was not created by me, all right, nor am I going to, shame or blame white people who did not create it either, because they did not live back then, all right? They didn't create that social structure, right? However, they do still benefit from it. But let me just stay on track here. When it comes to our real world living situation, our goals are not the same. As an African American, actually, that's even technical, and because I cannot unpack that label, I won't use it. As a Black person, okay, as a dark.
So are you saying it's not the same? And when you say that, are you talking personally? Like when you say our goals are not the same, you and who? Who are you talking about? You and a white person?
Yes.
But
so let me finish.
Okay,
let me just finish.
Okay.
Let me finish the whole thought, and then maybe it'll make sense, and maybe it won't. All right. But what I'm saying is my goal is to live. All right. So they have because they are part of mainstream culture, everything they do is so normalized that it's almost become invisible. Whereas for me, as a person of color, I'm simply fighting for the right to live. I am in a country whose basic political structure was founded on a belief system that anyone who was not white and male and wealthy did not have the same rights and access to power as everyone else. And so those ideologies still exist today, and they seep into every fabric of our society, our cultural norms, our frameworks, our ways of thinking. It's everywhere. And so allyship is not going to be enough with your erase race cause. To me, that's what it sounds like you're seeking for. That allies isn't enough. I need co-conspirators, because an ally only works if you and I have the same things and the exact same goal, and I'm supporting you. But when you are being oppressed, well, then I don't have anything to offer you. You have it all. And if at any time you decide that you're not going to allow me access to it, well, then that's a problem. That's a big problem. And so in order for us to erase race, I feel like that is valiant of you, Carlen. However, I feel like there are some necessary, courageous, meaningful, uncomfortable conversations that have to happen between Black and white people that have not happened for 400 years. There's been no intervention. There's been no counseling. I know people who have gone through what they went through with 9/11. You can't tell me that there's not one person who was born, after 2000, let's say, who would remember it? Probably someone 10 and up. So people 10 years old and older. What was that, 2010? Is that, no, 2001 is when it happened. So let's say 2010 and up. Anybody who was, at least 10 years old on the day of 9/11 remembers where they were, what they were eating, what they were doing when those two planes went into that tower. You are aware that there are still people till this day who are in counseling for one day of trauma. We went through 400 years of trauma. That is multi-generational trauma. Not just, and when I say we, let me be clear, I'm talking about white people too. They endured that trauma just like we did. Yet we have never really sat down and talked about it in an honest way. And I understand why we have not. I feel, based on my experiences and interactions with white people, some of them feel shame and blame by these conversations. Some of them feel guilt. It triggers a sense of guilt and defensiveness. And so I want to try to mitigate those feelings, even with white privilege, to acknowledge that white privilege does not mean that white people don't struggle. White privilege does not mean, when I say white privilege, I am not saying that a white person had everything handed to them on a silver platter. I'm not saying that all white people never have to work for anything, because many of them have worked darn hard for what they have been able to acquire. However, on the other side, I am saying, let's look at what white privilege is. And in order to do that, at this part in my journey, of my experience, I feel that white people need to sit down with us together in the same spaces and have these conversations. And in order for that to happen, there's going to take trust. And I feel like Erase Race skips that step. I feel like because you're there, Carlen, you're ready for this conversation. But most Americans are not ready. We're not there.
So you say we're not even ready for the dialogue?
No. We're ready for the dialogue, but we're not ready for Erase Race.
Well, first of all, let me clear up a few things here, because Erase Race really is about the conversations, but the conversations are not about, I guess, what you'd call the trauma. The conversations are about our connectedness and our ability to hold hands and go forward. Because in Erase Race, one thing that we do, because I've got, and now, especially over the last few years, a great wealth of history and the knowledge. And as I travel the country, I stopped at these historic sites, and it's just amazing the things that our ancestors did and the way that they were able to go through the periods of struggle that they had and go forward and live each day. And so to understand that is very important. However, that is good information for us to use so that we can go forward. History is not meant for us to turn around and look back there and just marvel at it. We've got to use that to propel us forward into the future, so that our children and our grandchildren going forward, they have opportunity to so much different life. Why in the world would we still be talking about 400 years today? And when you think about that, and I hear people use that all the time, but they talk about 400 years, I go, but wait, my grandfather and my great-grandfather did so much stuff. They blazed so many trails so that I wouldn't have to worry about 200, 300 years ago. Why am I still concerned with 1865 and the remnants of Jim Crow when my grandfather did some revolutionary stuff in his city so that he was able to make sure that I didn't have to go through the same stuff he went through? And I think it's because we turn around and we look back and we just continue to marvel, but we haven't thought about, but what is the way that we're gonna go forward? All right, so that's one thing, but here's the other thing, all right? The other thing is my belief in people and as Erase Race. And that's my whole thing, is that the issue is humanity. Because what you'll find, and as my wife and I, every year we go to Nigeria or whatever, and it's just amazing. I was so proud of my Nigerian roots, and that I was in Nigeria, and I found out which particular tribe I came from, the Igbo tribe.
What tribe? I want to know.
Igbo, the Igbo tribe in
Ooh.
Nigeria. And Igbo, if you know the Igbos, they're the business types or whatever. And so it gave explanation to my wife on why I'm always trying to go into business and do all this stuff, whatever. So, but anyway, so I was very proud of that. But then as I continued I was just getting into my West African heritage and got into that. And guess what I found out eventually? That the Igbo tribe was the tribe most responsible for selling the others into slavery. And so this is one of the points I make to people. If you go far enough back into your heritage, whatever line it is, you're going to find some bad stuff. Because what?
Okay, and so let me address that for you, because I love that you unpack that, but there is still some unpacking to be done, which is why we are exactly where you feel like we shouldn't be 400 years later. So at the time when Europeans and the Dutch and the French and all these people were coming to Africa and were looking for people to come back and build their nations, there were a group of peoples who had migrated into West Africa who were not Africans. Okay, they were Black, right? Mm-hmm. But keep in mind that the social structure or this social construct of race had not yet been established, all right? Mm-hmm. So it really was about nations at that time.
Sure.
And so you had a nation of people coming into West Africa who had different customs. They ate different foods. They had a different beliefs, a religious system. They had different ways of knowing and teaching and doing and learning and doing business. So it was quite natural when another nation came in saying, hey, who can we take? That these people were like, oh, you got to take these folks right here. We can't stand them. They got to go. So to say that, okay, well, if you go back far enough, you will see that humanity has done tons of heinous things. And so we cannot decide that we're going to punish a particular group of people based on the pigmentation of their skin, when at the bottom, when it boils down to it, it's all we all are human, and we all were responsible for, you know, a variety of things from good to bad. Here's the other part of that for me as well. When they put those people into enslavement, right? And those people were put on ships and brought over here. At that time, the custom for slavery, okay, you had prisoners of war. That was one type of slavery, all right? Then you had religious captives, okay? And then you had people who were, what do they call these people? They work, but you pay them. Indentured servants. There you go. The fourth category had yet to be invented, and that was chattel slavery.
True.
Which was the worst of the worst kind, propagated by one particular nation who practiced these type of practices. And so we still, even with your example, we cannot dismiss that. Now, again, I can see what you're saying on the race thing, but that's why this whole racial idea or the construct is so messy. And that's why it's still around. That's why we still have to talk about it. It is ingrained into everything we do. That's the socialization process that I don't think you are acknowledging. Because when you say, why do we have to still be talking about this 400 years later? Because it still means, being white still means something.
Well,
so does being black. Those two things still mean something.
Okay, and why? Why does it still mean something? You know why it does? Because of what you just articulated. Because of the socialization process. And the socialization process defines what is important. It defines the terms that are used. It determines the ideologies that are created in a society. And so our socialization process says, hey, by the way, this thing that was created, race, which gave white people more status and put black people on the bottom, we've been teaching that, and we continue to teach that. Socialization.
Wait. Who is we?
Because look, I'm saying we do. We all do, because to subscribe to it is being a part of the industry. Yes.
So that's where we're going to disagree, because the people at the top.
Look, first of all, they created whiteness, right? So whiteness is created. You agree with they created whiteness?
Absolutely.
And so there's a whiteness. So since they created whiteness, then that made everyone else non-white. And so then you had, of course, blacks, and you had the others. And then some people slowly transitioned back into being white who were previously non-whites as well. Now some of those people are in the white category, because the whole race hierarchy then created this. They created this system of this.
So how can you put the same, see, that's not equitable to me. How can you put the same pressure on everybody to erase race when the people group that created and benefit from it still exist and still enforce it? But you want to ask people of color to, let's let that go away.
Well, because we're in a different age. We're in a different age. First of all, because, people used to talk about this thing about power. Not only because I'm a Christian and I'm a United States Marine, but do you think Carlen Charleston, and you know me well, you think Carlen Charleston runs around talking about they got more power than me? And so what kind of victim mindset?
It doesn't matter. Carlen,
what you mean?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, it does matter.
You don't have to walk around. You don't have to acknowledge it. It's there.
Unless somebody convinces you that you are.
No.
You cannot be powerless. How can you feel like you're powerless?
No.
What is something that...
I would say that I don't feel like I'm powerless.
Then, but
I
wait,
will also
then why
say that there is a governing force. There is a political system that on every turn is reminding certain groups of people of how powerless they are. And if you dare to reach outside of those norms, outside of that matrix and operate there, you have situations like Tulsa, Oklahoma with the Tulsa bombing. And cities that decided, hey, y'all don't want us to be a part of you, we're not equal, fine. We will be over here, we will do our thing. We prospered, and it fueled white rage.
All right,
Can you give me something that,
can you give me something 21st century? Likewise, like that shows that
absolutely,
like what?
I can. Let's start with special education. Special education in schools has been used as a systemic force to keep Black kids and kids of color, specifically boys, out of the mainstream classrooms, as well as AP courses, honors classes. We still have segregation today. It's just going to look different. It's going to be hidden in our practices and procedures. So now it's not going to be someone standing outside of your school with a burning cross and a white hood on. Now it's just going to be enforced in our systems. I'll give you a quick example with the whole crack epidemic. Of course, white supremacy and white privilege will veil itself under reasonableness. This is what white rage will do. It hides itself in, well, we just want to keep our community safe. Isn't that what the young man who, the gentleman, George Zimmerman said about Trayvon Martin? He was simply doing his job as an American citizen to keep his neighborhood safe. And so he came in contact with a Black young man and he shot him because he felt threatened. He hid his racism, except we saw through it, underneath a policy, practice, and procedure. So yes, it's still here. It's just going to show itself differently in the 21st century. So that is my 21st century example.
All right. So what you're saying is, you sound like you're making my case for me. You're making the case that because race does still exist, and people do things because of race, which you call racism. And so my intervention then is to say, well, let's take that ideology out so that people don't do things because of someone's skin color. That is my solution. And you're saying,
how do you do that?
Well, there are a number of ways, but the first thing you got to do, and I say we got to change the terminology so that we can change the ideology. We think these things that we speak. And so if we speak separate, if we speak segregation, if we act segregation, if we live that stuff, then, I mean, it becomes a part of what we do. And we don't think that we do that. So when we create, and this is what we do in our society, and we don't think there's anything wrong with it. I know, and this is why I do erase race, because we got a long way to go, and it's going to take a lot of work. People think segregation is now so voluntary. Why is segregation so voluntary? And why people are so proud of maintaining their of whatever color they are communities? And you'll hear that all the time. They're proud of their communities of this color, of color. Why is that so? That is voluntary segregation. And I'm saying that is buying into a system of segregation.
I acknowledge the terminology that you are now using, but I want to also challenge you to zoom out just a little bit and also understand that I believe, and this is just me, that when they decide to have cultural or community pride based on the pigment of their skin, right, or their ethnicity, it is because mainstream culture has pushed those cultures and the values of those cultures out into the margins for so long that we have to say to ourselves, man, Black power, power to the people, Latinidad communities, let's rise up. All these different Muslim cultures, you name it, they're all coming out and saying, hey, we have value. Because we are different does not make us less. Because we are not, the mainstream society does not make us less.
I agree.
So
I agree.
No matter how much we change our system, our words and our phrases, at the end of the day, I have told my 2 Black sons, they are kings. You are kings, you are kings. I have told them this all the way up until present day. My youngest is 14. There was a situation where there was a car accident outside my son's school, and the traffic was so backed up that he had to walk to school. Once he approached the officers, my son broke down in tears. He was so afraid to approach these officers. So now it didn't matter that he was powerful. There was someone more powerful standing in front of his school. And he was afraid that they would mistake him for some type of thug or criminal, because that's the lens that a lot of them have been trained to see because of media, mass media, etc., that he would get shot. And he called me and he said, Mom, I'm too afraid. I'm not going into the school. So my point is, Carlen, if it doesn't matter how much we decide, it sounds like you're saying that being powerless is a choice, much like our brother Kanye West said that slavery was a choice. Now, I might surprise some people and make some people angry, but I am really going to agree with Kanye West's statement. At first, I was infuriated, I was mad, I was angry, I was calling him names. But as I thought about it, I said, oh my goodness, Kanye West was talking in a level that was way deeper than most of the sleeping people in the United States and even the world was going to understand. It was a choice. However, would you say that with my son deciding not to go in that school, as powerful as he believes he is as a young Black man, and I guess me calling him a Black man would go to your point. Okay.
Yes, and that's my point. See, and that's what I'm saying.
But what happened? What happened? Why didn't he want to go in that school?
Well, because look,
because what?
Tanya, you're making my case every time you speak. You're making my case.
No, you're making mine.
Because you're painting this, but you're painting the picture.
Race is silly.
Yes, and so what I'm saying is, we have history, and we have an ideology that's been painted into our young people, into our
by who?
By all of us. Well, this is what I'm saying. Look, the history is clear on what happened. We had
answer who?
Well, first of all, make it clear here, Tanya. Humanity is vile. It is wicked, and man has done. If you look at it, man has done vile things to human.
We agree there.
That
happened. We agreed there. Tell me who.
So, and let me tell you what. In America, it was the white man, Europeans, who came and founded and started the country, who ran the Native Americans off their land, who brought in slaves from Africa, whatever, and created a dominant society so that they could have their place at the top of the racial hierarchy. And they put that racial hierarchy in there to make sure that we knew we were at the bottom.
They sure did. I'm saying, take your message to them. Why do this is where we're at. This is where we are. Perfect. I'm glad you said that. All right. So you say take their message to them. And this is why we got into what we did with the Avengers Facebook post, all right? Because here's where we are. Take their message to them. My point in that post was saying that I know, which is true, is that you and me and there are people of lighter persuasion who have the same view that we did, of not only about our history, but our road to go forward and how we need to come together to be a part of that team. So guess what? We do.
I'm not worried about those who don't believe like we believe. So that's why I come to people like you and those others who are lighter persuasion, who think like us, because we then become the powerful. Because in our paradigm, which is the one you created, which I said I was going to plagiarize because you said it so beautifully, you said they feel like they're part of the team, they value each other, and they have equal access to each other's resources. I know that there are people in our society, and it's not just those who have my skin color, that we,
right.
that we are gonna, right. So that's why I can understand people like you thinking I should be preaching to them. I don't need to preach to them. I got you. I don't need to preach to them. Therefore we are the powerful, and we won't be walking. We won't feel weak, and we won't feel like we can't do. I got you, and I got a lot of other people of a lighter skin, and we come together, and we don't have to worry about those others. We are stronger than they are, and we have more than they have, and we will make the change. And so, I'm not preaching to them. I'm not trying to see, this ain't 1960s, and I'm trying to tell them not to lynch my son. This ain't 1950s. I'm not telling them don't beat my son. This is not where we are. We're at a different place. I'm getting allies, and I love the term allies.
Who's a different place? The lynching just looks different now.
No.
The lynchings are done with bullets instead. What are you talking about?
Because, even if it looks different, that means we're in a different place. So that means now, have we decided to go grab our allies? That's what I'm saying. Let's stop.
I don't want allies. I told you allies wasn't good enough.
That's what you need. You need.
I know. We need co-conspirators. We need people who are all in.
Both.
All in. Because allies are just going to support you when they feel like it.
I'll use your words because you did have the words. So do you think that there are co-conspirators today?
Let me say this.
It was simple. Do you think there are co-conspirators out there today?
There are.
T. Lou,
just listen to me. Wait a minute. But there are more of the other than there are.
It don't matter how many of them.
It does matter, which is why.
Greater is he.
Here's why I'm agreeing with you. I'm going to agree with you on this point.
Okay.
Which is why I do appreciate movements like yours. However, I am saying, as I zoom out, and I'm going to be a little bit critical, is that there are some conversations that need to take place. And I know you understand this already. You also already understand that there are going to be people on both sides who are very disgruntled, who have pain. And so I'm wondering, sometimes I'm wondering, when you make those posts on Facebook, whose pain are you prioritizing? Because sometimes I feel like they're, especially in the people of color group, the ones who are not where we are, right? Feel offended that you would ask so much of them when it seems like you're asking so little of the people on the top who still benefit from the system of racism that is still in place today in every area. So here's what I want to say. 400 years of American chattel slavery, and I don't want to just talk about America. This was happening all over the world. White people did not come out unscathed. They are suffering today. They really are. Some of them don't want to admit it. Some of them just stay away from the pain of it. But I will agree with you, there are co-conspirators out there who are willing to join with us in this fight. I celebrate them. And I want to empower them, because some of them are there, they're just in ally mode. And then some of them are just in, what's the mode when you do bystander mode? Because they don't understand the power of their voice, or they do, because white solidarity is a real thing. There have been plenty of white people in spaces where racist remarks are taking place, and although they disagree with them, they are silent. So here's my question for you. How can we call them co-conspirators if they remain silent? I think Dr. Martin Luther King had a quote where he talks about how egregious it was about, he mentioned, oh gosh, I used to have this quote memorized, but it basically talked about that at the end of the day, we would not remember the slurs and the terrible things that were said by our enemies. We would remember the silence of our friends. Right. So I appreciate your movement. And that's why I loved, if we circle back, that's why I love the example you use, because I think it is a great tool for some critical thinking. It's almost like a painting in a museum. You put it up and you put 50 people in front of one painting. And what is the saying? A picture has 1,000 words. And so here's all these opportunities for these conversations, some courageous conversations, to take place where there is going to be some discomfort, where there is going to be some things said that may rub people the wrong way. But instead of us running from that discomfort, we need to lean into it. And that's what I appreciate about your platform. Even though I disagree with some of the things you say, what I do appreciate is that you are getting in our faces with this platform. And you are challenging people to lean into the discomfort, because that's where a lot of the transformation takes place, is when you're uncomfortable, right? So these growing pains are necessary, and I celebrate you for those. But, you know, as your sister, sometimes I appreciate that you will consider my point of view on the things that you think I'm missing, and you also challenge me with the areas that you think that I'm missing.
Well, the key thing is that there is nothing more valuable than the discussions like these that we have to make us think critically towards coming up with the best solution. Because at the end of the day, and that's why I kind of, you know, when you start talking about talking, I'm like, you know, I think we've talked enough. We need some solutions. We need to be working on some solutions. And so,
wait. Who's talked enough? Well, I'm gonna disagree there.
Here's what I'm saying. I was listening to this online thing. I think it was P. Diddy. P. Diddy sponsored this thing about coronavirus, and he had Van Jones on, and he had a bunch of these others, and they, you know, and I kind of applauded P. Diddy because he had Al Sharpton on, and these people started talking, and he kind of like cut him off and said, hey, we've done enough of this talking stuff or whatever. And so I kind of could feel him there, because I think our thing is that these difficult conversations, I understand, but those difficult conversations are not action. We need work. We need people out there you know, we need some receipts, you know, we need some people out there doing some stuff. And so I'm saying, you know, yeah, we can get around to talking, but let's talk walking. Let's talk walking. Let's do some stuff, do some stuff going forward. And so So here's my hope.
Him bringing Al Sharpton to the platform was definitely going to just promote more talking. No offense.
And that's what he said. But I think P. Diddy felt that, and he kind of cut him off. But so my whole thing is that, those people that you talk, I like your terminology though, and I'm going to keep using it. So if you got to get some royalties or something. Co-conspirators, because I could tell stories, and once I traveled around the country, went to all these states, 112 cities, whatever. That's why I guess I have this fire about these co-conspirators, because I met people that never ever would ever thought had the heart to do these things. I've listened to testimonies of 70-year-old white men who said, God sent me through what I went through so that I could be a force for this thing, and being a tool for unity. So I just know that the co-conspirators out there. The big difference you and I would have is that you would say that those co-conspirators are simply allies and they're not ready for this. And I'm saying they're ready. Somebody's got to carry the flag, and let's go forward, and we can make this thing happen. And so I don't have that same sense of there are too many on the other side. What we have on our side is way greater than that other. And I think we just don't know it. And Satan's doing a great job of making sure we don't know it. We don't know that person over there, different skin color, feels the same way that you do. They care the same way that you do, because that race thing keeps us thinking about what used to be and the way that it was and how we got here. But now we hear, and it's a totally different thing, because we know, and those people, like I said, they're prepared. This can't go on. It's going to change. And I told somebody, I said, it doesn't matter. I said, I'm just a guy who sees I got the vision. I said, and I might be like Dr. King. I might not get with y'all on the other side. It's going to change. We've got to realize all of humanity is wrapped up in us, in this oneness that we are. And we got to start living that way. And you say, because I grew up in Prairie View, Texas. And if you know anything about Prairie View, Texas, 100% black. I grew up black land. Everything was all black. I knew, and that's why when it comes to history, you talk about black history, we knew black history. We learned that stuff at 5, 6, 7 years old. It didn't matter whether they were teaching in the schools or not. I knew Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, first heart surgeon, and this. Garrett Morgan, who invented the stoplight.
So that's what makes you a great candidate for this movement, is because you grew up that way. Most people, I'm going to say most people did not. I did want to make one correction. True. I cannot take credit for the co-conspirators idea. That really comes from Dr. Kunjufu. Juwanza Kunjufu, amazing Black psychologist that studies Black boy, it's called the 4th grade syndrome. And it is basically studies that help teachers counter the conspiracy to, well, you're not gonna like the title, but countering the conspiracy to destroy Black boys. I know you probably don't like that. And then the other woman, she's an abolitionist, social activist, teacher, educator, professor, Bettina L. Love. So this whole, conversation about the allies and co-conspirators comes from her. So I want to make sure that I give due credit to the ideas of that. But they were very powerful, and they resonated with me just like they resonated with you, which is now you will adopt that into your terminology. And you will continue to use it. And so now your premise about we need to change the terminology is effective. And I'm telling you, I agree with all that stuff. But I feel like you want to dismiss the past and move forward, when for me, and I'm only going to speak for me because I cannot speak for all of Black America. For me, as a Black woman, so much of my existence, my reality, the several different masks that I have to wear every day is rooted in the filter or the perception that white supremacy, notice I didn't say white people, but that white supremacy has developed for me. And so every day that I walk outside my door, I'm battling against that. I did not create that. Now, I'm not blaming white people for that, okay? However, many of them still benefit from those systems and say nothing. Why? Because it's comfortable. Is change coming? Yes, change is inevitable. So I agree with you there. But I think—
Let me ask you a quick question about that, though. Why do you feel like you have to submit to that white supremacist ideology because it's there?
Oh, wow. So, because the system of white supremacy is ingrained in everything we do. It's the reason why I have a parent.
It's not ingrained in everything I do.
Because you're.
I want to. She said, "I don't want to demean you." Hey,
no. I would. I go out. We're on video right now, so I can't say what I want.
So I don't go out.
You and me in a private conversation, I would say what I want to say.
I don't go out. I don't go out thinking about white supremacy. I go out and do what I do, and you know me. I'm into hip hop, rap. I was an old school rapper, whatever. I go and do my thing. And I don't.
That is you. I am in a job where I am a minority. I am expected to fulfill or adhere to office and cultural norms. The whole time we've been over here, and a lot of us were already here. When I say us, I mean people of color. We have had to assimilate into dominant culture. This is the same reason why you have people who immigrated over here from Italy and Ireland and etc., changing their last names. Anything they had to do to make sure that they provided the best for their families and themselves.
So we still got to do that in 2020? That's still applicable in 2020?
Yes. And because it is not for you or you choose not to see it, that is on you, bro.
Well, I think it's an issue of power. It's a power issue. And I'm like, if you feel so, and this is what I do. I taught high school for 12 years, and you know what I do? I call it, I create privilege. That's what my whole philosophy is. I create privilege. I taught in the hood, 100% minority school for 5 years. I went to the white side of town and taught for 7 years. In both of those groups, I taught privilege creation. Privilege creation. And I said, because you will be a generation, and I used to tell them all this, you will be a generation who won't grow up making excuses for why you can't. It is your world. Go get it. And
that is unrealistic advice, and you have set up a lot of those kids for failure. Yes, you have.
Well,
as an educator myself, that is not real. That is where we want to be. Yes. Well, but that is not where we are. It is where we can strive to go.
So you tell them
those kids, especially those who are not a part of mainstream culture and have been pushed out to the margins, need to know that they are going to encounter some trials and tribulations and some hurdles and some barriers. And they need to be armed with the tools to navigate those, not be told, oh, you can do it, you can be whatever you want to be. Ultimately, that is an endearing statement, but it is not 100% true when you unpack it. That's unfair.
Wait, hold it. So what you're saying is, so I messed them up by telling them, hold it. So I messed them up by telling them, you've got to go out and get it. You get what you need. You need your knowledge. That's why you're here in school. Get your knowledge, and it's going to be up to you. Get your whatever. And this is what I tell them. There will be obstacles in life. You know what obstacles will put there for you to do? Get over them. Go do what you got to do. Get over them. And you're saying you need to tell them there are going to be obstacles that will shut you down, and you won't be able to get over them. Is that what you're saying? What do you
that is a blanket statement. I am saying that the statement that you made based on what you just said, I hope you unpacked it for them. Well, that's all I'm saying.
I'm teaching them for years. I'm teaching them for years. So everything that I do, I come in, they had a quote at the end of every class. They said, I am the only problem I will ever have, and I am the solution. Why do I say that? I let them know that in their mind, it's up to you. And so, so my philosophy wasn't, life is going to be tough, and people are going to they're going to try to stop you, and you might get stopped sometimes, but just try, but you're going to get stopped. I didn't tell him that. No, I told him it's going to be tough, and you better climb that mountain. I have a kid now. Every time he went joined the Army, he got out the Army. Every time I see him, he says, Colonel, I'm still climbing that mountain. I was like, you better be. You better be. You better. And so that's my
great motivational talk.
It's not motivational. It's reality. It's reality.
I want to set our children up for success as well.
That sets them up for success.
Part of that is allowing them the ability to think critically and to look at things no matter how difficult they are. It is not black and white. The same example you can find in Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King. Society prolonged and perpetuates one figure while it tries to demean and defame the other. There needed to be a balance. For me, the Dr. Martin Luther King of the early civil rights movement and the one before he is assassinated are two different people. And what we needed was that latter Dr. Martin Luther King. We needed someone who understood, wait. I'm not an advocate for violence, so please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you in what you were demonstrating that P. Diddy did when he was like, enough talk. It's time to walk. It's time to do something. Now, it's funny that he would say that, however, because some of those people on that platform, and I did not watch the Black State of the Union town hall meeting. I didn't watch it. But when I saw some of the people on there, I was very, I felt conflict, because some of those rappers are a part of the virus in their music. They continue to perform and sell music that does so much damage to the Black community. So that's all I'm saying, Carlen. You are a great teacher. You're a great motivator. You are one of a kind. However, you already addressed my concerns, so we don't have to talk about it already. You have already stated that you told these kids, do reach for the stars. You can get it. Only person to stop you is you. But you also let them know that there are going to be some challenges, but not to focus on those challenges, because they can persist and get there. And so that is the message we want to send them. So we agree there. So I'm sorry. At first, I took your statement as a blanket statement. So we're good.
Now, and that's and I love teaching high school. Man, I tell you what, I really do love teaching. And I became the best teacher when I went there to learn.
Amen. Oh, absolutely.
I tell you what, because you learn. And I think, I tell those kids, most of those kids today, I tell them that they inspired me to do this erase race thing, because I saw then that, my goodness, the same thing that I did with the kids in the hood side, I was doing with the same. It's the same. And so so that's where I am on the whole thought thing. And so that's why I'm like so impassioned about, I think that we have to begin looking at, it's a different world. And my dad is.
I don't agree. I do not agree that it's a different world. The same people who are in control in the past world are still in control now. And I think, I know you feel like it's not true, but for me, I believe that the Avengers model that we started this conversation off with is a great place to aim for. I believe we can get there. But I do believe that we must acknowledge that we're not there, and we must acknowledge why we're not there, and then make bold moves to change that.
Well, and the Avengers aren't, so are you saying that there are no white people who think like you about the issues of integration, how we need to be together and work together towards this thing? You don't think there are any white people who think as objectively, or do you think objectively, or do you think subjectively, or do you think objectively about that there are white people who have good hearts and minds and strive and are co-conspirators? Do you think you said some of those people do exist?
Oh, they absolutely exist. I work with many of them. I'm friends with many of them. But let me say this. There are white people who are honest, good, loving people and have the best intentions and still perpetuate inequities across the board. You can be a mom with the best intentions. I know it because I am one. Carlen, there are mistakes that I made raising my two boys, and I didn't raise them alone. So shout out to their father, Dale Lewis. I'm not going to be one of those women, but just listen to me. Listen to me. I had good intentions, but I needed training in some areas. We needed training in some areas. So are there white people out there? Yes. However, I'm not going to say however. Are there white people out there who are committed to this work of social justice and equity? Yes. And there are even more white people, a greater amount of white people who support the systems, the racist systems that make it so that we have a difficult time to get where we're going to get. And you know what? I'm going to say something that's going to blow your mind. There are Black people in the way too. We have Black people. Skin folk don't make us kinfolk. They stand in the way. So I'm with you. I believe that Satan uses racism to distract us and to keep us fighting one another.
You say racism, and I say he uses race.
Okay. We'd have to unpack both those definitions and determine
we know what race is.
Those meant to you.
Right. So you understand that race creates the hierarchy. It's built in is the division and the sense
who supports it? And who supports it?
Well, those who subscribe to the concept of race.
So you're telling me that all I have to do is pretend like my race doesn't matter and my world is going to be better for me. Well, because I don't subscribe to it.
Well, I'm going to say, if I will tell you this, if you lived outside of that racial paradigm, your existence is going to be completely different. And like I said, I'm not dictating, because there are so many other things. It's not like this is the fix-all solution. What I'm saying is, though, when you get back to humanity and you start operating from the platform of humanity rather than the subset segment that is in this little box over here, and you expect it to only perform in that box, then your outcomes are going to be totally different. And so I'm saying, and that's what Erase Race does, it tells people, let's get out of the boxes that they've tried to put us in. Let's come into the world of humanity. Let's start building relationships and connecting with people on the basis of humanity and not according to the boxes that people have tried to put us in. And let's see what that does for our world. And I think that's a better world. And so my world then says that, and that's why I'm doing Carlen's Book of Humans, where I show people how my world is created. And my world is not based on the fact that I was in a black this or a black that or whatever. It's because I have people of all skin colors who were valuable parts of my life. And that makes me Carlen. And I think everybody
and part of getting out of those boxes is understanding why you were in those boxes in the first place.
Sure.
And I feel like we don't spend time there because it makes a group of people uncomfortable. Quick example: South Africa, Cape Town. I was on the island where President Nelson Mandela was imprisoned as a political prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched as the tour guides, who are actually former prisoners, okay, on this island, I watched as they unwrapped history for us. But they were very cautious about what they said about the white Afrikaners who were responsible for all those injustices. So this is another challenge. So again, I appreciate what you're doing, but I do feel like in order for us to get out of those boxes, there is still a training. There's some conversations which you're talking about, right? But I feel like there's another avenue which includes some trainings, some self-reflection, some asking ourselves, from whom and where did I develop these beliefs and assumptions and values about someone who might be culturally different from me? Because even when we take out race, you still have other categories where people discriminate. We have able versus disabled. You have ageism. You have gender. Now we've added sexual identity. We have native language. We have 21st century versus, before that time. So there's all these layers. You see what I'm saying? And when I facilitate workshops on cultural diversity and equity and inclusion, I often will hear, most of the time it will be the white conference guests or, class attenders saying, why do we always keep talking about race? Why do we keep bringing up race? There's 16 other plus cultural groups. Why do we keep coming to race? What would your answer be? They ask me that all the time. What would your answer be to that question?
Oh, because we're rooted in a race ideology. I would say, they don't want to ask me that. I'd say because of what those people did who created this in the first place. And that's the whole thing. The creation of the concept of race itself. And so that had a particular purpose, and it was designed for a particular reason. And we know that was not a good thing. And so we brought this bad thing in, created for this bad purpose or whatever, and now we're trying to live in it as acceptable. And I'm saying it's got the same plan it always had. And so that's why I'm so intent on, we got to do away with this concept. We got to do away with the concept. So if they ask me that, I would say, because that's what our culture, the American culture, teaches us, that because it does what I just talked about. It puts us all in our boxes.
So now I'm going to blow your mind. I'm going to blow your mind because, and you know this already, it's beyond America. Yes. It was Western civilization, but due to technology, it is now global. And this is one of the reasons why you will have people, Nigerians in China, who are being forced to sleep on the street because the Chinese are accusing them of spreading the virus. Okay, so all of this whole ideology, this poison, mostly carried and distributed through religious colonialization, has affected the planet. We've got a big job ahead of us. And I think
that's why Corona's here. Corona's here to make us understand that we're globally connected. We all got the same issue. The question is, who's working to resolve theirs? And I just think, like I said, I'm doing it right now. I left my job because
that's a great question. And another question is, who is benefiting if we don't resolve it?
The same
that's
people have always
critical thinking
benefited.
that
Those
I
in power,
appreciate
you know?
from having with you. And that's what I have said to my students as well. If we would just stop fighting long enough to pull up the curtain, you know, remember in The Wizard of Oz or even The Wiz, when they went behind and they found out that the Wiz wasn't what they thought he was? If Black people and white people would stop fighting long enough to lift up the curtain and see who's orchestrating all this mess, we would be livid. That's my same argument with Republicans and Democrats. Why do we fight? For me, it's the same party, folks. Y'all stop this. We are so distracted with fighting that we never stop long enough to do some critical thinking and then come together. And that's when we'll figure out that we are bigger than our opposition.
She's talking race. You know, we're called the American Unity Movement. That's what we're trying to do. We're bringing people together. And then you want to be against us. We're bringing people together. You need to get on board. T. Lou, get on board with the race is the American Unity Movement. You just talked it. I got it on tape. I'm going to play it back every time. Every time I see you outside saying something else, I'm going to play it on live. I'm going to put it on live. I'm going to put it on YouTube, and everybody's going to say, here she is talking the American Unity Movement. I'm going to put our logo, and you're going to be a caption speaker for us.
Never. But listen, my phone is about.
Oh, okay, cool. Uh-oh, you muted yourself.
And so again.
All right, cool. All right, we had good.
I don't get mad. I don't get mad with you. I appreciate your maturity and your ability to attack a thought, an idea, an ideology, and not make it personal. So I love you, brother.
Love you, girl, and I love the conversation. You know, we probably have some more of these because I like talking to you, you know.
Sounds good.
We can argue, and everybody's going to get the benefit of our arguments.
Amen.
All right, love you, girl.
I love you.
Catch you next time.
All right, you take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.